Hey, in this episode of Small Business Talk, I'll tell you what business books I'm reading. I'm going to talk to you about networking, and particularly business to consumer networking, and also the ABCs of LTVs and CACs. And why the heck am I sitting at a kitchen table? All that and more right after this. Hey, and thank you for joining me for another installment of Small Biz Talk, the show where you ask a question and I'll answer them. So the first question I got today comes from Eileen Smith, who writes, "Hey, I love the new series. Thanks for the advice. But I have a question you might want to cover. What books do you recommend for small business owners? Kindle books work best for me, but I live to hear what you're reading these days." Hey, great question, Eileen. Right now, currently, I'm reading Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. I have to admit, I'm pretty guilty about not reading as much as I should. I've spent a lot of time actually talking and engaging with other entrepreneurs and kind of learning through mind sharing and mentoring groups. That's how I've mostly done it over my career. It's worked well for me, and I think it works well for a lot of other people. But there's certainly great books out there with a lot of information. But be careful, some of that information is rather dated out there, so I tend to stay more current with the kind of books that I look at. And right now it's a lot about social marketing, social media, and selling in the modern era. That's what I tend to look at. But there's some great stuff out there, and you can't forget classics, like anything to do from Napoleon Hill or others out there. So yeah, I'm probably guilty of not reading as much as I should. The next question I got comes from Carl Nixon, who writes, "Love to hear your take on business networking events." So here he's in the UK. Hey, go UK. They are heavily promoted to startups and people who buy into it. For some types of companies, solicitors, accountants, and any type of local B2B works pretty well. Companies that it does not work for, mainly B2C, that's business to consumer, they basically get told they can't get networking to work. It is their fault. Carl, networking events are really great, even for B2C, when it pertains to things like biz dev, distribution, anything the kind of the back office operations of a small business. Now, let's talk about networking directly to customers. Where does everybody spend their time these days? Right here. Everybody's got their face right here on their phone. This is where your dollars need to be spent, right there, getting onto that phone. And social media is definitely the way to go. That is networking, social networking. And in a B2C space, I recommend putting quite a bit of your budget into getting there on the phone and mobile, especially mobile. This is what everybody's using these days. As far as things like trade shows and those kind of things, in the B2C space, probably doesn't make much sense. It's not your fault. It's simply the sign of the times. These are where people are, and this is where you want to be. You want to be. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. It's not all, ask for the sale, ask for the sale, ask for the sale. You've got to get involved. You need to allocate people to respond to people on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Snapchat, and all these places. Automation is great, but you need to allocate resources to interact with people to build your brand. So that's my advice on that. Finally, let's talk about the ABCs of LTVs and CACs. What's CAC? CAC, customer acquisition cost. Very, very important thing to track, especially as an entrepreneur and in the startup phase of a business. Simply put, it's the amount of money that you spend to get people to buy your product or service. Now, what's a LTV? Well, an LTV is the lifetime value of a customer. So there's kind of a ratio there that you want to maintain. Roughly 4. For every dollar you spend on customer acquisition cost, or CAC, you want to be looking at about a $4 or more return. Now, the numbers are going to be really skewed in the beginning as you have all your startup costs, your cap costs, your marketing costs, all these things to take into consideration for that initial customer acquisition cost. However, as time goes by, you'll kind of settle into a nice kind of routine number. All right? Now, the other thing to keep in mind, as a business matures and gets older, is eventually you will move away from the CAC model. But in the beginning, it's a very important thing to know. That lifetime customer value or lifetime value Very, very important. It tells you one thing. Not all equal customers are really equal. There's a big difference between short-term net profit on a customer and the lifetime value of that customer. You want to concentrate heavily on that and understand those key metrics to help keep your business profitable. And I think that will wrap up this week's edition of Small Biz Talk. Thanks a lot. Remember, you ask the questions and I'll give you the answers.